right, everyone, we can get started. Good morning to the students that are here. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Twee. I'm the Arts Education Specialist at Baltimore Office of Promotion in the Arts. I think all of you students probably know me already because I manage our Scholastic Art and Writing Awards program across Maryland. Before I continue, just a few housekeeping rules. We're asking students to stay on mute with your microphones off. You can turn your camera on if you want to, but you don't have to. You can type your questions in the chat. I'm going to do a test message in the chat so that you all can see the chat pop up. If you have questions, you can type them there, or you can wait until the very end when we have time for some questions. So today we're here for a wonderful workshop presentation hosted by Maryland Photography Alliance and Professional Photographers Association. Since photography is one of our biggest submission categories every year for Scholastic, this is an opportunity to learn from working photographers, which is exciting. Today's workshop is focused on reviewing student work and hearing feedback on what professional photographers may look for or keys on how to make your work better. And in a few weeks, we're planning a part two workshop, which will be more of a like deep dive career panel. So please look forward for details on that. And now I will turn it over to the rest of the panel so that we can jump into the workshop. And I just want to say thank you to the students as well as your schools for sending your work to me so that we can look at it. So thank you, everyone.
Twee, is that my cue?
Yes, and there's your cue. Sorry.
That's quite all right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ed Palazinski, and I represent the Maryland Photography Association and, excuse me, Alliance. And can everyone see that slide?
Yes.
Great, thank you. I'd like to get a brief overview as to what we're going to be doing this morning with the images that we selected. And I'd just like to congratulate everyone that does participate, which I think is very, very important. To be able to participate in an event such as this, like a critique, I think is very, very important to get some feedback on one's images. What we will be doing today is doing what we call an image critique. It's not a contest, but a helpful discussion about your photos. I will be the host, and I am the chair of the Committee on MPA Judges. And the following certified judges helped out in this effort: Vidyata Mitra, Pete Morton, Mary Brayman, two of which will be commenting today, and of course myself. Mary and Pete will be going through each image that I will be controlling from my own computer and making comments on them. And I think it's really important to keep some basic criteria that we'll actually be using to make our comments. What is the visual impact of your image or the subject? How is the use of light accomplished? The color, gray tones, composition, attractors or detractors, which are many, and how to make that image better. We're always looking to see what the positives or negatives may be or not be, and how to make that image better. So what I will do next is bring over my Lightroom application, and we will start off with 40 images that we have selected from what was submitted. And I'm going to go full screen and turn this over now to Mary and Pete. So let me know when you want to go on to the next one, and we'll take it from there.
Ed, may I say just a word before we begin?
Absolutely.
Um, I think that it's important for folks to realize that of the images that were submitted, it was quite challenging to pick out the top 40. There were excellent images that we felt weren't quite on the same par as the others, but they showed a great deal of imagination, and I really encourage you to continue shooting. And that's
Great,
it.
great,
Yeah.
thank you. So I'm going to be your first commentator, and I'm very excited to be here and participating in this. These images were amazing in so many ways, and it made me think. Some of them made me laugh, and we're going to just make quick comments, but I'll start off with this image, which is a really interesting portrait. I love the fact that the photographer very beautifully placed the person, the subject, in the window with the blinds behind him. The backlighting is lovely. There's really just enough light on his face on the left-hand side. Maybe a little bit more to bring out that bottom part of his face, but having the right part in shadow is really effective. You get to see a lot about his body, and the backlighting with the blinds closed, good decision. Great contrast of black and white. My only comment, and this one is a little tricky. It's always hard to do with architecture. The lines of the walls and the windows are a little crooked, and that's very difficult with a camera. And sometimes you don't see it when you're looking through your lens, but moving your body around a little to get the lines straight might have helped this a little bit. Sometimes you can do that if you use software afterward, but otherwise I think it's a beautiful composition and a very powerful portrait. Pete, sorry.
I agree, Mary. I think that it's a beautifully done portrait. I really have nothing to add to what you pointed out.
Okay.
Great.
Next image.
This one is mine, and I'm glad. This was a fascinating image. When I first saw it, to be honest, my immediate thought was, wonder why they took this. And then the more I looked at it, the more excited I became. It really began to pull me in. I kept wanting to go in and see what's inside that door, to open the door and look in. And then I began to see the paint can and the items on the yard. And I pondered whether someone actually lives there or used to live there, but it told a complete story to me. It was both interesting and in some ways kind of haunting. Uh, in terms of what I thought pulled me in, I think the use of the door and the chain link fence with a leading line pulling me back toward the door along with that sidewalk were really nicely done. One thing that the photographer might consider would be cropping a bit more on the right, or at least darkening the really bright building on the right. I think that pulls my eye away from the fascinating scene that's in front of me. Anytime you have something that's especially bright in a photograph, the viewer's eyes tend to go there. I don't think that I could crop enough of the building off because I wouldn't want to lose the chain link fence on the right that pulls me back along the sidewalk. But I would crop probably down to the vertical pole of the chain link fence, and then using some of the software that's available. And there's a great deal of software on smartphones, cell phones, as well as desktops and laptops. Find a way to slightly darken the bright white that would still be left on the right side of the building. Mary, your thoughts?
I had great comments of being a Baltimore resident. This spoke to me of place. So I agree with you. And I'm wondering, Ed, if you're in Lightroom, and I think you mentioned you could do some of the things we suggest. Could you just crop this a little just to show what that would look like?
Absolutely.
Oh, I guess if you're in full screen, it's a little harder to do. Okay. But I think it's good to show the effect, because I'm
Yes,
going to
and
mention those things further into the critique.
Yeah,
You know,
I'd
exactly.
just
also add, it's easy to add a vignette.
Yes,
yeah.
that would help a great
Yeah.
deal.
Exactly. But no,
Do
no,
you
no. Good comment. And
Great.
whenever you need for me to do that, just let me know.
Great, thank you. I love this. I have done cafe, coffee shop shots myself, and this one was so. There's a story here, and we're gonna talk about that a lot with your photos, because so many of them have a story going on. The alignment of the items was really nice. I love that you kept a little bit of the white wall on the side, and it's dark enough so it's not distracting. But there's this story of this hand with the heart tattoo, the person on the phone, and a cup of coffee. So my thoughts are, do you love this person you're talking to, or you have to have a cup of coffee because you're not sure about the person you're talking to? So there's lots of story in this photo that makes the viewer wonder what's happening. The use of color is very good. It's very strong with the yellow and the red. Great use of color in this too. Ed, I'm gonna get that right, Pete.
Pete,
Eventually.
Eventually.
I agree. I love this as well, Mary. I think that a couple of things that I noticed that really stood out for me. One was the apparent wide angle that brought the coffee cup apparently closer, and I can see the steam coming off the coffee.
Yeah.
Then I noticed the cracked face on the phone. And I didn't know if that was significant, intended, or somebody was just upset because they dropped their phone. But I thought that it all went together beautifully. And frequently in images, an odd number of items works especially well.
Yeah.
And this has that odd number very nicely. The coffee cup, the cell phone with the photograph, and the very distinctive hand. Well done.
Yeah. I agree.
And this one is mine. And this is a very, very clever image. Um, I thought that the photographer who did this had really a brilliant idea. The the idea of the alphabet, I at first wondered what I was supposed to be seeing here. And then I began to see the impressions that had been made on the paper, and particularly the top left where it says, "I tried to love," and that really struck home. I think it was extremely clever and quite unique. Without the hand, the fingers in the image, I think that it probably would have been kind of a look at it once and not be terribly interested in coming back. But for some reason, the fingers and the fingernails and the impressions that are directly in front of the fingers, which I couldn't quite make out, but it appeared to be a drawing. Um, I thought all of those continued to hold my attention. So I thought this was not just clever, but it's also a unique photograph, and that's challenging to do. So a nice job. In terms of what I might consider, very little with this image. I think the highlights, it would have been so easy to blow out the whites on this, and they aren't. The contrast is just about perfect because I can see the indented writing on the paper without a great deal of trouble at all. And it would have been easy for that to just disappear. So very nicely done. Mary, did you have thoughts?
I agree with you, Pete. It's you picked up on all the things I thought, and just again, there's a story here. It's so nice to see an original image that tells a story. This image was so interesting to me in ways that I wasn't sure about. I'm wondering if there's something I don't know because just not familiar with why would somebody use two cigarette lighters other than to get the bigger flame? I love the positioning of his hands, the heart shape. It's a very, again, there's a story that I'm not sure about. I'd like to know more. You're drawing me into a situation that I don't understand and have questions about. I will talk a little bit about light in this one because flames are so hard. You get such a bright bit of light from a flame that it doesn't help with the images around it. You get no detail in the flame, but you get light from it. So I think the thing I would concentrate on this kind of an image in the future is that the focus on his hands is not real sharp because there's no detail in the flame. What I'd really like to see is detail in his fingertips and his fingernails. You got some on the knuckles and a little bit on the lighters, but I'd like to see a little bit more detail in terms of sharp focus on the hands because they're the thing that are telling the story. There's nice receding into the background. His body is there, but it's not overwhelming you, so you just know it's a part of the story, but getting a little bit sharper focus on the things that are in the very front of the frame would be a goal for me in the future. But again, we're going to talk about story a lot. I really want to know, is there some significance there to the two lighters and the act he's performing? So Pete, what would...
You got my name right. Yay.
Third time.
No, I agree with you very much, Mary. One of the things that I noticed was the position of the thumbs and forefingers actually made a heart, which I thought perhaps was significant that there was a flame within the heart. And I didn't know if that was the story that the photographer was passing to us. I was delighted with the cropping. I thought that it was an excellent idea not to include the person's head. But yes, very nicely done. This is an image that when I first saw it, it kind of startled me, and in a good way. It was so obviously, the first thing you see is this dramatic chain, and it's positioned nicely with a slight diagonal. Diagonals in photographs tend to add a feeling of motion, of interest. But as you begin to look at the photograph, you begin to see the figure in the background. And that to me is what actually made the photograph really work. The figure is something that I keep focusing on after my eyes initially latch onto the dramatic chain. And the colors in the background, the red that's above the seated figure, was another thing that made my eyes continually go back to that figure. The pink shoes, apparently shoes, on the seated figure were quite interesting. So I thought the photographer did a very clever thing with this, and it was clearly intentional with out of focus depth of field on this. I would have liked perhaps to have had slightly more depth of field, because if the figure in the background had been just a little bit sharper, still blurry, but a little bit sharper, it might have pulled me in even harder. The the colors I thought were nicely done. The cropping, I could have seen it cropped a little tighter on the bottom to perhaps go up a couple of chain links, so that the seated figure was not vertically in the center of the photograph, but cleverly thought of and nicely executed. Mary, your thoughts?
Um, Pete, I think that exactly the same comments. And Anna, can you do that little bit of a crop? Because that was exactly my thought. I loved that
Mm-hmm.
there was a transition from the dark to the light,
Right,
but then it became too much. Yeah, right about there.
right. That's
It just,
exactly.
again, the brightness of the bottom draws your eye away from the action. So that
Mm-hmm.
bit of cropping puts that background much more in your face. So I like that too. This is another story. I love the fact that first of all, there's a lot of black and white coming up, and a good choice for this photo. The background is so noisy that you don't need the colors and all the craziness of the city, because the person is the thing you want to focus on. And there's so much going on with him. I like that you had him keep the earbuds in his ear. The gesture is really nice. His expression is good. You've got some light on him because, again, you got the light is so much behind him, but there's enough detail in his face. I am a stickler for having the horizon level, but in this particular photo, I think the crooked horizon works beautifully. As Pete mentioned before, sometimes it gives you a feeling of motion, but in this one, it's not so much motion as it is there's something off kilter about this whole scene. So I love the composition, the lighting, the details in there. The only comment I would make, and Ed, if you can do this, another cropping issue. The car on the left-hand side draws my eye away from the guy. So I would get rid of just that left-hand side car to get, yeah, there now you got cars on the right, but they're not bothering me because they're not white. So this crop makes this really powerful. The angled buildings, the way he's standing, all of that tells me a story about this person. So Pete.
I totally agree. That was the cropping that I was thinking of as well, Mary. I think that the expression on the young man's face is what to me makes the picture, and I'm really glad that the eyes are sharply in focus. I think the depth of field on this image is quite nice. I don't think it would work to have the background be totally blurry. And yet, with the depth of field that was chosen, the background is not overly competing with the subject of the image. Well done.
Mm.
And some photographs tell a story, and some photographs really tell a story. And this one fits the latter category. Of course, the viewer, the first thing they're going to do is read the writing on the man's chest. But the next thing that happens is that you begin to look at his eyes and his face and his expression, and they go so beautifully with the words that are written. I think it shows that he's very serious. He's bothered by something. Something is really significant to him, and he's sharing it with us. And I think a really masterful image. The perspective and the angle of the camera was well chosen. You really want those two diagonal poles to be part of the photograph. At first, I wondered if it would work better to have the hand on the left side, hand and wrist, be completely within the image. But the more I thought about it, the less I thought that was necessary. This is well thought through. Um, a couple of things that you could do that might make it just a touch stronger. There's a white label on the inside of the bill of his cap, and that tends to pull my eyes away from his face and his eyes. And I think that's a shame because there's a real story there. So I would either crop out or not crop, clone out, or at least significantly darken that little label. The white lights in the background don't bother me in the least. I might consider cropping a bit on the right, almost, at least halfway between the current edge of the frame and his elbow. Do you want to try that, Ed? Yeah, somewhere in there. And if you go back to full screen with that, I think you'll see that that really pulls your attention to his face after you've read the words on his chest. So brilliantly done. It's an emotional image and it carries a great deal of impact. Mary, your thoughts?
I really have nothing to add. I have the same exact suggestions, and it really is a beautiful story. More stories. This is a great capture of a moment. I want to know what this kid is so happy about. I'm very intrigued by the setting, and the computer tells me something, or at least it makes me want to ask questions. I'm wondering if he's happy because of what's on the computer or happy because the computer's not on. It's he's just, it's a beautiful expression on his face, and having the environment makes this really work well. I think I'm going to talk later a couple of photos. When you're in charge, sometimes you need to set the stage. You need to add things or remove things or make things, replace things. There are a couple of distracting things in this photo that I might have removed if I could have, and that's the spray bottle and the bag on the door, just because I keep looking at those things. I don't mind the groceries, the rag on the faucet, the computer is important, but it's just a very busy scene. I might have cropped the chair out a little bit. It's it's easy to say, and I understand that after the fact, all those things might look even obvious, but you capture the moment when you can, and it would have been hard to stage this shot and get that emotion. So, just things to think about, but you can't always do it. I love that you are just finding a moment in this child's life that is so beautiful, and it shares with the audience that there's a story there that I want to know more about. I think the only other thing I might say is focus on this one's a little tough. I'm not, and that's hard in a dark room, but I would like to have seen his face a little sharper too. And that's something you might be able to control more than the bag on the door or the spray bottle. So I just, working on focus is always a challenge for photographers. So that would be my main suggestion for future shooting, is getting that focus on the face, because the face is so important. Pete.
Yes, I agree, Mary. I think, to me, this is really a powerful image. The expression on the child is one that makes me feel like he's off in his own world, dancing to the music that's probably being played on the laptop. I agree about cropping slightly on the right, perhaps to just eliminate the red chair. I also might consider darkening I guess it's a bowl that's on the counter, since it's so close to the young man who's dancing. It's bright enough that it keeps pulling my eyes away from his face, which is just a terrific face and a wonderful capture by the photographer. It's images like this that are almost impossible to stage. They're simply images that you are aware enough that you capture them at the time. Very, very nice. And speaking of staging, staging is actually quite a skill of its own. And this is a very cleverly done photograph with the mirrors. I think having the face in it and having the bright light, and in fact even the triangle of light just above the face that's being reflected is excellent. The focus is where it needs to be. It's on the eyes of the reflected person. I think the crack in the mirror on the top, on the right side, I don't know if that was part of a story that the photographer intended to tell us, or if that was simply the mirror that was available happened to have a crack in it. I tend to start reading things into photographs, assuming that the photographer intended me to see something, and I wonder what it was. I think the focus on the face is excellent, but the other part of the focus that I liked a lot was the fact that the mirrors themselves are not sharp. They are not the story. The face is the story. If the photographer intended me to have some knowledge of the cracked mirror, then I think the cropping is excellent. If the crack is simply an unintentional characteristic of the mirror that was available, then I would tend to crop a little bit on the right. But I think that it's a clever photograph. A bit more light on the face might be useful. Um, I think on the very bottom toward the left, it almost looks like fingers coming up toward the mirror, but I decided it probably wasn't. It's probably pens or pencils or something. Um, after I realized that it was unlikely that those were fingers, they no longer concerned me. So I thought it was a very cleverly done photograph and very nicely staged. Mary?
Good, great comments. I really don't have anything to add to what you've said. Thanks.
Good.
This continues in the telling a story photo. I think this photographer picked a beautiful time of day. Always important to get the timing of the day because of light. And what's really nice here is that there's what's called complementary colors. Our orange and blue are complementary colors, and there's a perfect juxtaposition here of the blue sky and this whole orange foreground because of the light of the street lamp. The composition is great, the lighting is beautiful, great choice of time of day, but even more important is there's a story. I want to know why this kid is standing there staring at a house we can't even see. We see a lot of others, so we know there's probably a house there. Does he want to go in? Does he not want to go in? He's beautifully lit by the street lamp. I would say only one, and he's very sharp. I like that. Ed, can you do me one favor and crop out a lot of the car on the left?
Okay.
I
Yeah.
generally like to have the point of interest, this young man. I think his placement is follows a lot of rules of photography. Not quite that, little bit less. Yeah, to go back a little bit more. You still see there's a car, but I don't need the license plate and the light is, yeah, try that. It breaks a rule to put this character so far over to the left, but I think that car is distracting, and it even adds to the story because it distances him from the thing he's staring at. And the leading line of the sidewalk wants to take you, well, where could he have gone out into the left and gone out of the picture? Is he going to do that? Which way is he going to go? So there's a lot going on here that really works beautifully. Color, placement, story, really powerful photo. Pete.
I totally agree with you, Mary. The car on the left bothered me slightly. My approach was, instead of cropping, I was just going to suggest darkening it. But I actually like your cropping approach better. Good comments. One of the things that I noticed was the replication of the color. That's the replication that's shown in the lights that are in the houses and on the porches as we move back through the photograph. I thought that added some nice balance to the image. And this is an image that immediately grabbed my attention. I loved the fact that I was drawn in to see the person sitting and apparently eating. I couldn't quite tell if this was a breakfast cereal bowl or soup or what, and that didn't really matter. But being able to see into the kitchen and seeing how the photographer played with the light coming in from the top left was really nicely done. Very clever. The shapes in this also captured my attention. I thought that the fact that the vertical lines actually are vertical, from what I can tell, was nicely done. I think that if this had not had vertical lines, that would have been distracting to me. One thing that, as Mary was discussing the keeping the lines straight, is that I found that if lines are almost horizontal, perfectly horizontal, or almost perfectly vertical, it's disturbing. If, on the other hand, they're dramatically not horizontal or vertical, it feels like it's intentional and it's not at all disturbing to me. So I think that this photographer did a wonderful job. I thought the creativity of the particular cropping was good. I played with the idea of cropping off the door leading into the kitchen, and decided I really liked seeing into the kitchen further. So I really don't have any suggestions for dramatically improving this. I think it might be interesting to have the person who's clearly the subject of this image be maybe just a tad sharper. I couldn't tell the level of sharpness of that individual, but it didn't bother me a great deal because the lighting and the shapes were so intriguing. I think that monochrome, doing this in black and white, was absolutely the right way to go. Otherwise, the colors of the various things, particularly in the kitchen, uh, would have drawn my eyes away from the subject seated in the chair. Well done, Mary. Your thoughts?
I perfectly agree about the kitchen doorway, and the light that is in there gives you some sense of scene. I would add that I agree with all your comments, but the only other thing I saw was that I wondered what this young man was doing, and then I saw the remote on the table, and I thought, oh, good. I don't know that it was deliberately placed there or just left there because it was there, but now I know what he's doing. So if I were staging that, I would have definitely made sure to leave the remote there so that it tells you what's going on. Why is he sitting there so entranced? So good, really nice shot.
Yep.
This, again, being a Baltimorean, I love city scenes, and chain link fences, you can't get away from them. So including them in the picture is a really nice effect. This one was done extremely well because the chains are out of focus. I don't need to see the detail of them. And of course, when you're that close, you can't get the foreground and the background in focus very easily. So good choice to make the focus on the buildings. You also did a really nice, you, the photographer, did a nice job of placing the chairs and the plant right in the view of that diamond shape. It just tells me a little bit about city life, what's going on in somebody's backyard. And I love the colors. They're very soft. Nothing is over highlighted. Nothing is too dark. There's a really nice balance, and it's just a nice scene. I would suggest a couple of things. Ed, if you could crop, first of all, I'm going to go back to being my stickler about lines, and as Pete was talking about, if you could make this, I don't know if you can do it with adjustments, if you can make the building walls a little bit more perfectly vertical. They're not slanted enough to tell a story. They're just sort of out of kilter. Yeah. And then crop the left, because I don't need that white stuff on the far left side. And it pulls the fence out a little bit. That's perfect. Not maybe a little back, a little tiny bit. So yeah. Oh yeah, you got to get that white out there. But so just getting the vertical lines straight and a little bit of the distraction away on the left-hand side. Now I want to focus on that alley. What's down the alley? And there's something interesting. There's a little bit of light there. So there's a nice little city backyard scene, nicely caught, just a tiny little bit of correction on some of the lines. Architecture's really tricky, but at least we got the center lines straight. So I love the story here in this very soft, muted tone. Pete.
Absolutely. And I think your cropping really made a significant difference. One of the things that I was impressed with in this is it made me feel that I'm looking at a pot of flowers with a welcome sign, and then I'm blocked off by this chain link fence. And it's kind of a dichotomy, a contradiction. And I found that really interesting and really well thought through. I also like the fact that the window that we're seeing is blocked off. So the welcome sign itself uh, began to stand out in terms of what I thought the photographer was saying to me. Nicely done.
Oh, I wish this were mine. Go ahead, Pete.
I win. No,
Yeah.
this is wonderful. The expression on the young lady is just perfect, and the tattoo on her arm um, really tells a great deal. I think the thing that grabbed me most in this, other than the delightful expression, were the shapes. We have repeating circles, both in the top left with the whatever those are on the wall, and the tables. The circles kind of pull it all together for me, and then those are contrasted with the straight lines on both the fence on the right in the top right and the lines of the tile on the floor. The lighting on the woman's face is wonderful. Um, the angle of the photograph I thought worked very nicely. The the fact that we included the wall on the left was, in my opinion, an excellent decision. I might have added just a little bit more light to the face, particularly the left side of the face. I also thought that the hair uh, of the woman was a very interesting and attractive part of the scene. I like having the hair sitting as a completely enclosed within the frame. I think if that had been cut off, it would have been really a lesser image. But beautifully done, slightly heavy contrast, I believe, but that doesn't bother me significantly. Monochrome again is really the way that I think this works best. So nicely thought through and nicely captured. Mary?
I agree. I love this. I love that the photographer got up high. It is
Yes.
not a typical angle that we see, and it was as excellent a choice as including the wall. The only comment I would make is focus is a little bit of an issue here. Her face is so gorgeous, and I kind of zoomed in on it a little bit, but the chairs and the tables are in beautiful focus, but her face is not. And that's what you should have reversed that. So
Yeah.
working on that in the future, the person is the story, not the tables. They add to the story, but I would have liked to have seen her beautiful face as sharp as could possibly be. But your choices of composition and angle, and I even like the high contrast because the darkness is really powerful. So I love this photo.
Yeah.
Oh, so yeah, this one, I know exactly where I am. Not everybody might, but I know this spot really well. I think the photographer did a great job of using these tiles to make, and that pathway to make a leading line to take us right into the background. There's a softness again to this one that is very pleasing. I want to go there and sit on that wallway and just think about something because it's such a pleasant scene. I think the light of the buildings on the far right-hand side are perfect because that walkway is just leading me right into whatever that is, and I want to go there. After I've sat and contemplated for a while, there's just a lovely, peaceful feeling about this. I would say two things, and Ed, I'm going to ask you. The tree on the left-hand side, excuse me, is a little distracting. I don't think you have to take it out because it adds a little bit, but I use a whole lot less. Yeah, it tells me, it kind of encloses it, and it's a frame. I like that. It doesn't have to be in focus, but there's just too much of it. And the ship, that's the naval ship that's in the harbor, and it's so bright. I would darken that up because I don't want to. I know it's there, but I don't need to see that much of it. And the brightness of the tiles is what's really important. So he just brightened up the whole scene, but I'm sorry, darkened. But darkening up the ship somehow, it's not important how you do it. It's just that makes a whole lot of difference because I don't want to look as much to the left as I want to look to the right because of the leading lines of that beautiful pathway. You made a very peaceful, attractive landscape, and I think this works very well. Pete.
I agree with everything you said, Mary, and have very little to add. I was impressed by leaving the leaves at the top of the frame. I thought that was a nice touch. It made a frame within the photograph itself.
Yeah.
Well handled.
We are 1/3 of the way through, so we're going to have to kind of step up our comments. It's almost 10 o'clock.
Okay.
Oh, this
I wish
one's
this one were
mine.
mine.
There's something in photography called well seen, and this fits that perfectly. A lot of people would have just walked under this figure and thought nothing of it, but I really like how it came across. I love the cropping, and the reason I love the cropping mostly is because you captured the light coming in. And I think it's the light that makes the image really work. The portion of the building at the bottom right corner, it was a good decision if it was a conscious decision to leave that in. It sort of anchors the image. The orange color is mesmerizing, and I like seeing the guidelines holding the figure up. And in the sake of moving a little faster, Mary.
I agree. I love orange and blue. Perfect.
Yeah.
And again, the placement is. It looks like he's stepping off of the building. It was just very, very well seen. Perfect.
Yep. Yep.
There, before you leave that one, Ed, there was a little flare on the right side, just above the building, and I actually like that. It's not a matter of it doesn't bother me. I actually think it adds to the image.
I seem to get all the city shots. City girl that I am. I love this. Color is so important. What I see here is a little bit of a story. Being a city person, we have been inundated with these horrendous green garbage cans. But this story tells me that this homeowner has tried to enhance this area. He's got the green garbage can has a nice decal on it. The image has picked up some nice color, again, blue and orange coming through. You've got all this stuff to deal with, the chain link fence and all that, but the wind chimes are just gorgeous because this says, I'm trying to deal with the mess of the meters on the wall and the garbage can. I'm trying to make this area beautiful. I probably would have changed this in two ways. One is a staging item, and that's getting rid of the planters that are hanging there just because they're so bright, and they don't really add to the scene. So I would have removed those planters. I also would have made this the vertical line straighter because I think that's, again, it's not really a skewed photo. It's just not perfectly perpendicular. So I would have straightened that up. But I like the story of giving some sense of beauty to an otherwise, normally uninteresting city scene. Pete.
Absolutely. I think the lighting in this is just wonderful. It immediately pulls my eyes to the chimes. Uh, I might have cropped just a touch on the left, maybe almost up to the pole, but it doesn't bother me that it's not cropped a little tighter. I'm glad I got this one. This photographer is very clever, ingenious setting up of the images. Clearly the shadows are telling a huge story, but the fact that we have the gunman, the green gunman shooting people, and he's already taken care of one of the other two people. And the fact that the colors are showing that it's one, the green one, against the other two, and he's making good progress. The shadows themselves outstanding, and the sharpness of the image is not perfectly sharp on the fallen soldier, but that doesn't really bother me. I think that the sharpness of the two main standing figures is what matters. A couple of things that I also liked, I liked the fact that the shadow of the man on the left side, the beige figure, his shadow is completely shown. In fact, all of the shadows are completely shown. That to me is quite important. The angle of the arms and the weapon of the figure on the far left are fascinating. The dark triangle at the top left bothers me somewhat. Items that are in corners of photographs, whether they're especially bright or especially dark, can tend to make you notice them more than if they were in another portion of the photograph. So this one, I think, if the base or camera angle had been so that that dark triangle weren't there, that might be something to consider. Also, the dark triangle at the bottom left bothers me far less because it's not completely black, but that could also be lightened slightly. Mary?
I know we have some time things to consider, but in this case, I'm gonna completely disagree with Pete. I
Okay.
like the corners because it does something other than that solid white surface that the things are sitting on. I thought about them, and if I had seen nothing but the white table, I wouldn't have been as interested. I think they're leading lines that don't take you too far out, but they just add interest. So for the sake of time, I'll just say I like them, and it was an interesting thought to include them.
Good.
Great story here. I'm hoping that the person's not standing there staring at this saying, "Oh, darn." This is so interesting to me, and I love the fact that you've included so much color in the background. The red works really well to contrast with the tire. It's just a great close-up shot. I might have gotten rid of a little bit of that item on the far left side, just that round orangish spot, because it keeps pulling my eye out. I don't mind the twigs coming over, but just I don't need the figure on or whatever that is on the left hand side, because the focus again on this, and it's great focus, is the damage to this tire with that red contrast. So really nice thinking through, looking at detail and color. Pete.
And I found that it was fascinating to see the writing on the side of the tire, not for highway use, which to me told another story, and it immediately made me wonder if the owner of this tire had ignored the writing and had used it on the highway, and in fact we were seeing the results of that. But fascinating image and very well handled. Ah, one of my favorite places to photograph in Baltimore is Graffiti Alley. And if any of the photographers have never been there, I strongly encourage you to do it. It's a wonderful place. The colors on the alley and in this photograph are just incredibly dynamic. They're such strong, vivid colors that the first thing you see and feel when you look at the image is, wow, look at this. And then gradually you begin to see a little more detail. And suddenly there's a gift in the bottom right corner. You see, oh, there's a person here. And that adds tremendously to the photograph because the large uh, person painting on the wall above the person toward the top right of the image almost begins to look like that might be someone looking down at the actual human in the picture. So I think that this is extremely well done, well seen. I think the including the individual is what makes this image work for me. Mary?
I agree completely. Very well seen. This is kind of, it made me laugh, this photo. We there's a fad going around in the city. I there see this quite a lot. I live near a park. I live, houses in the trees, tree pits. The painting of rocks became a pandemic hobby, and this just brought it all back to me. Kids sitting in the house with nothing to do, so let's paint some rocks. Nice lighting. I love the lighting on this. That it's backlit. Excuse me. Gives a lot of drama to the foreground, and it's just a cute little capture of it tells me something. You just know this was a pandemic residual. Couple of comments. The reflection on the far left hand corner. At first I thought, oh, why would you do that? But then I looked at the colors and the balance, and it really works very well. I think it was smart to keep that in there. The only thing I don't care for is the stick on the very bottom, which is totally out of focus. I probably would have cropped this just to remove that stick, but keep the reflection of the painted rock in the scene. So it's just very amusing and peaceful to me. Yeah, I like that because everything that's important is sharp, and that stick didn't help. I love it. I love it. Really nice catch, Pete.
And I agree. I think that cropping makes a huge difference. With that cropping, the only other thing I would consider is the very bottom right corner now stands out for
Yeah.
brightness, and I would darken that. But
Yeah.
but well seen. Ah, such a clever photograph, and it makes you think, wow, I think I've seen this dog. I think I've seen that squirrel, and the expression of the dog looking at the laptop and the squirrel on it is just wonderfully captured. I think the photographer did a magnificent job capturing this. Seeing this, it's the timing that must have taken place. Scenes like this don't often last long. The the eye of the dog is beautifully sharp, and that's so important in this image. The fact that the lines are not vertical on the wall and the hallway is absolutely fine. They're they're far enough off vertical that it's intentional and adds an interesting perspective. I might consider cropping a little bit on the right just because I think the clear image is the dog's face and the squirrel. Yeah, I'd move it over about there. And it would have been nice to have just a touch more of the laptop on the left so that the head of the squirrel wasn't butting up against the edge of the frame. But that's really just a nit. I think you have an outstanding photograph here. Well done, Mary.
I agree. It's just one of the number of photos that made me laugh, and yeah, nothing to add.
Right.
Really great. Oh, we have a couple of political photos in this collection, and this is one, and it is amazing. I love the lighting. The lighting on the face is great. I even like that the lighting on the flag is a little bit brighter than the face because the story is in the flag and the face and the tape on the face. The tape's a little bright. I might have toned that down a little bit just because that yellow doesn't, I don't want it to distract from the rest of this face or the flag. I just think the placement, the angle is gorgeous. The only thing that bothers me is the hand holding the flag behind the head. I might have either darkened up that hand or told the person to move the hand around behind the head so you see just the head and the flag and not the hand. But otherwise, the composition is magnificent. The choice of the black background fits beautifully, and it makes the powerful statement you were intending. Pete.
Absolutely. I've found I kept thinking if this were a contest, I'm sure this would get an award of some type. But the story that's being told about the person shown with the flag and not being able to talk about it is how I interpreted the tape over the mouth. I the only thing that I would suggest, I agree with slightly darkening the hand and the fingers because it's a little bit distracting. But I think you need them to be visible, just not quite as brightly visible. I would consider cropping some on the right. I think that you want more space in front of a person than behind them. And it just feels more natural to give them space to look into or move into. But it's an extremely powerful image, well thought through. It's really quite polished. Nice. Very clever. The the idea of having the two dancers um, standing at the pole in similar positions is wonderful. I also like the fact that they're looking around the pole on different sides. Uh, that I thought sort of pulled it together instead of having them just look directly at each other. It added some interest. I was sorry that they didn't appear to be totally sharp. This is this is a case, particularly the dancer on the left. When I looked closely at it, the face was a bit blurry, and I think that if that had been sharp, it would have been dramatic, totally prize-worthy. One thing that I would change in addition to the sharpness is the yellow sign that's on the door. And in honor of Mary, I would also straighten the vertical lines a bit. So I would remove that sign, either clone it out or use some of the software available on post processing to eliminate that. But a very nice idea, excellent pose, and well executed. Mary?
I know we need to keep moving, but I got to say, I love the light on this. It was a
Yeah.
perfect choice of getting that light through her skirt. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with all that you said, Pete. I would even say, as a photographer, this looks like a perfectly staged scene. And if
Absolutely.
you're there setting this up, getting them in the right place, getting them in the right position, I would have taken the sign off. I would have moved the bench with all the bags on it. I might even have moved the photo off the wall, because all I want to see are the two dancers in very sharp focus. And I think we try to be inconspicuous as photographers, but when you're in a situation like this, you're in control. Move stuff. It takes a little bit of courage the first couple of times, but after a while, you just say, "Oh, hold on a minute. I'm going to move that bench out of the way," and then you take the shot. So that's my comment.
Agree.
Good.
Very nice. Beautiful silhouette. I think this was great. I know exactly where this is. A good choice to have the church behind outside the window, because it adds some drama and interest, sense of place. I don't know that I would straighten this out. You could do it easily in post-processing. I don't know that I would, because I know the angle of the photographer is down low, which was a great choice. The light coming through her skirt, like the last one, is very, very beautiful. I might brighten up the floor just a touch, because there's tiles there that are a little bit interesting, but I don't know if that would change the silhouette. Really nice choice of place and on the person. The only thing that I really would do is I would move her right hand. I think the left hand up against the wall is gorgeous, but I would have asked her to move the right hand out of the way, but very, very minor. I love the silhouette with the light, the backlighting. Pete.
And the position of her feet, particularly the foot on the raised leg, was nicely conceived. Well done. Some photographers really have a fantastic imagination, and this photographer is clearly one of those. I absolutely love this image. The fingers pointing to the eye, the presence of the mask, the hair and how much of it is there, the sharpness of the eye that I see, the hint of the other eye without it even being included. I think this is just brilliantly done. I think the lighting on the face is excellent. At first, the lighting on the left side of the image concerned me a little bit, but the more I looked at the photograph, the more the eye became so dominant that brightness on the left bothered me less and less. So I don't think I would worry about it. Including the fingers pointing down was really an excellent choice. I don't really have any suggestions for changing this. Mary?
I agree. I had the exact same thoughts. And the only thing I would add is that as I grew to love the lighting on the left-hand side, the background, it gave me a little bit of sense of place. So it wasn't just him. He was in an environment. I don't know what it is, but it was an environment, and it tells me something. So I agree.
Right.
City shot, love this. Love the choice of black and white. I even love the wideness of it. You give a real sense of this street going way into the horizon. Good choice to pick a rainy day. You got the leaves on the street, a little bit of reflection, or actually a lot of reflection, but it's not clear because it's rainy, and it's there's just a lot going on with with the weather. So you picked a really good day. This would not have been nearly as interesting without the water and the reflections. The sky is blown out, but it tells me a lot about the weather, and I like the fact that it's the black and white choice was great. It's just a perfect. Here's the city, houses on the right, maybe a park on the left, and this street just keeps going on and on and on. Pete.
Yes, the repeating trash cans I thought helped pull me on back into this image. When I saw it, I kept feeling like I was walking down the street and looking at everything around me. Just really nicely done. And it's one of those images that most people would look at it before they took the picture and say, nothing here. But once you take the picture and actually start looking at it and feeling the emotion that it gives you, the sense of place, it's very compelling. Oh, good. I got this one. I like this a lot. I think, to me, frames within frames are really interesting ways to do photography. The obvious focus of the image is the wonderful face and eyes of the person behind the window, and including the door is absolutely essential on this. It's I kept, as I looked at this, kept seeing the closing device at the top left of the door and noticing that it was replicated in the background. And that sort of tied it together for me. I like that a lot. The face is totally captivating to me. I found that I kept coming back to it, and I kept seeing reflections also in the glass. And the more I looked, the more I saw in those reflections. I couldn't quite make out what they were telling me, but it added interest. It made me want to keep coming back to seeing this photograph. I might have cropped a little bit on the bottom, but I don't think that's a major problem. I think it would have been good to have the vertical on the left be totally vertical, but it's a brilliant picture. Mary?
I agree. I agree with everything you said. This, I spent a lot of time thinking about this picture. It's so compelling because the story here is walking through the city, the bike lanes, a perfect choice to keep the bike image on the ground, the shadows, not including people other than the feet. My favorite part is the sneakers of the person on the top and his shadow. I vacillated between just one person or two. And I also thought it might have been good to include more of the bike on the bottom. And, and this is another place where, as a photographer, especially street photography, you just pick a spot. You know that bike lane that's my spot. And I'm going to sit here and wait until I see all the right things come together. So this to me was a deliberate choice, and I applaud that a lot. Including the arrow. So there's a whole lot of interest going on here. I would love to have seen various shots of this spot with different shadows and different people. I kind of find the person on the shadow on the right not important, because the story is in the feet and the full shadow of the person with just the feet. But it's a photographer's choice, and you just, that's what you do when you find a spot that you want to shoot and you decide what you want to include. I think choosing the spot was the good part of this. And the color, I like it. I like that you didn't turn it completely black and white, because the yellow line is critical. So that's an important point. Pete.
And I agree, Mary, although I find the figure on the bottom important to the balance that I see in the image. I think when I played with the idea of eliminating that bottom shadow, it didn't quite feel right to me. But again, that's a photographer's choice. Nice.
Yeah.
I found it very hard to look at this image without smiling. She has such a captivating face. This is a wonderful portrait. It tells so much about the individual. I think that you could actually turn this into almost not a close-up, but you could do severe cropping on this and just make it a portrait of her. And when I played with that, that seemed to work. But give it a try, Ed. See if you can pull in on right about there. And then, yes, let's take a look at that. And maybe even just a touch more on the left, but not much. I'd just like to have a little more room in front of someone. And something like that still gives context. And it makes her just a brilliant portrait of her. To me, this image is all about her and her absolutely wonderful smile and expression. I like the fact that she's looking directly down, it appears to be down at the photographer. That makes it feel like she's connecting with me as a viewer. Very, very well done. Mary?
I agree. I like the crop.
Yeah.
I might not have gone as severe, but I like it. You still see the place, the environment's there. So nice.
Yep.
Almost similar comments. This is a story about place. You got this guy sitting at the desk. I don't know if you know him as a photographer or not. I'm going to go in my staging discussion. If you knew this guy, I probably would have asked him to take his bag off the table, because it's a little distracting. All I want to see is him, the computer, and the books. The books are brilliant. I love that you did that. And if you could really quickly just crop out the stool on the left, I either would have moved it, but cropping works too. I might have moved the whole chair on the left, because it's the story that you want to tell is this guy and the books. Nitpicky, I might even have cleaned the little piece of trash off the table on the right-hand side, but the lighting and the composition in this are terrific. And he looks sharp. You could tell he's concentrating. Great story. Just a little bit of either cropping or staging would have made this a really powerful picture. Pete.
I absolutely agree. I would have cropped the stool up, but I think the books are just fascinating. What a wonderful background. One thing that I would have done, particularly if I had known the person, is turn on the lights, or at least one of them, and let it shine and light his face. I think that could have really been dramatic, but nicely done.
Great suggestion.
This is an emotional image to me, at least. The expression on the dog and realizing that that's his leash or her leash tied to the pole makes me realize that the dog is either seeing its master arriving or is eagerly awaiting for the arrival of the master. I thought that the capture was absolutely wonderful. I I think the sharpness of the dog, and particularly the eye on the right is extremely sharp, was very good technology. And the vertical lines are vertical, which is excellent. I might have cropped just a little bit on the bottom. One thing I wasn't certain about was the color balance. I could not tell if the pink on the dog, particularly its muzzle and somewhat on the chest, was authentic or not. Um, but I decided to give the photographer the total benefit of the doubt and say, well, here's a dog with a pink nozzle. Um, so nicely seen, nicely done, and it tells an emotional story, one that kind of excites me to see the dog so enthusiastic about what she's seeing. Mary?
I agree. There's a great story here. I love the sharpness of the dog. Really good job on the focus.
Mary?
Oh, sorry. Uh, perfect street shot. I love this. I love the crop. I don't need to see their feet. I don't need to see the front of the truck. You got the story here. I might have given a little more space of the environment on the left, just because the guy's so close to the edge. But the guy on the right is the story. He sees you. He knows what you're doing. He's including you in and saying, "Hey, this is what we do." It's a Baltimore scene, and I love that. The colors are great. He's sharp. I I love they're obviously moving because the background is a little blurry. So you just chose to do the shallow depth of field on this. Either way, it works great. And I might have toned the truck down a little bit. So white, pulled some of the whites down, but otherwise great capture, great street shot. Pete, sorry.
Oh, I think to me, I also think the story is the man on the right and his orange shirt and cap really pull my attention directly there. I I I can almost see him yelling to me, or it almost looks like he's about ready to burst into song. On another hand, um, interesting face, but the gesture is absolutely wonderful. I would have actually considered cropping on the left, perhaps all the way up to, but not including that red stoplight on the back. Just go, yeah, right about there. Um, and I found that the other person in the image uh, didn't bother me terribly, but the story was this person. Um, and the gesture, and I love having the colors with the red rake and the lights on the back of the dump truck or garbage truck. Nice.
Oh, I love this. This is a really nice shot. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. This is you. I'm sorry. I can't help
Okay.
myself. Keep
What
going.
Mary said. It's very nice. I've taken similar images myself at the National Gallery of Art.
I'll be right back, guys.
The tunnel between the two portions of the art gallery, and the lighting in the tunnel with, if I remember correctly, the lights are actually traveling down, and the photographer captured those and used them to pull the attention to the silhouetted figure. The figure to me is where the story is, and the lighting behind the figure in the back of the image helps highlight the person standing there. I can see that there is a slight bit of detail in the lower part of the person. Um, I might have added uh, a little bit of light to that, uh, opened the shadow a little bit so that I could fully see that it's a person. It's hard to do. Or alternatively, gone in the other direction and simply left it as the head and arms of the person. But I think the idea is outstanding. The the leading lines pulling me into this image and pointing to the central figure are really wonderful. Mary?
I agree. Just very nice. Really nice.
I'm back. Thank you.
Great action shot. This one, these are so tough, and you got, and my screen's taking a while to show this photo, so it's looking a little out of focus, but I think that's just the lapse here. Um, this, what's interesting about this is the environment. It's such a dull day, and there's nothing in the weather that's interesting. There's nothing about the colors that are interesting except her red jacket. So it's all about the action, and I think you caught this at a perfect moment. And if you could really quickly just tighten this up to get rid of the left-hand side. I like the shrub or the weed in the middle that now will be able to keep moving, just a tiny bit more. Because I don't think that shrub on the left, yeah, that's good. Yeah, not too much maybe. But I just think that you want to, because there's nothing interesting about the sky, the rocks are kind of bland. All of this is about the action. And this way you kind of almost think, oh, I hope that thing's not going to be in her way. And it's just, it's great that the whole story in here is her jump and is she going to make it? Because that's a really good capture. I might have brightened up the rocks a little bit just because I'd like to see a little bit more detail in them, but otherwise, nice shot. And I mean, I'm sorry, Pete.
I agree. I think it's an exciting shot. The position of the person and leaving the large area below the person as they're jumping really adds to the excitement. I think it gives a sense of danger, which I find is really important in this image. The fact that the person is a little bit blurry works nicely because of it, to me, implies the motion that you know is happening here. Very nicely done. And speaking of stories, anytime you see somebody has discarded their what appears to be a Valentine's gift of candies, and in fact even thrown it in the sewer, um, there is clearly an intriguing story behind this. I think the position of the red container and the fact that it's upside down and the trash all over it is absolutely wonderful. A great part of the story. I think including the grate or fence or whatever the white area is was actually a good choice. I would have darkened it somewhat, um, and I would have darkened the white uh, trash that's at the bottom a bit because the story is clearly in the red heart. But I don't know if this was something that was simply seen and captured on film or in camera, or if it was staged. But either way, it was a wonderful way to tell a story and to add a lot of intrigue to your image. Mary?
Yep, I'm with you all the way. More stories.
Yeah.
We got this young lady, this beautiful young lady, putting on her makeup. I love that the lighting is so fluorescent. You did a really good job, whether this was the room or post production, of getting all those colors being very fluorescent looking. The red, white, and blue are just perfect together. It really tells a lot about the environment and her. We can tell that she's putting on her lipstick. Her face is. My signal seems to be playing with the resolution here, but I think that her face was sharp. What I would have done, I probably would have included a little bit more of her body on the left, because it's not in focus, and it took me a few minutes to figure out that that was her hand, her real hand, with the tube of lipstick. And I probably would have included just a little bit more of her to balance out her face in the mirror. But otherwise, I love the rest of this composition. I love the treatment of the colors. Pete.
Absolutely agree with all that you said, Mary. And more story, and an intriguing story this time. The position of the hands with the dramatic fingernails and the stripes in the flag, basically leading your eye over and over again back to her face. And the fact that you have this striking yellow gold headpiece, again pulling my eyes back to her eyes. Really well conceived. I when I saw this, I immediately liked it. I immediately thought it told a story. I did wish that the sharpness were slightly better, particularly on her eyes. Um, they seem to be just a little bit blurry, and that portion of the person's face is what I find most captivating, because all of the lines seem to point to that. Uh, I did wonder what she was doing with the flag, why she was covering her mouth and nose, but that simply added to the intrigue for me. Mary?
I agree with you. It's very, very powerful photo. I think we found a theme throughout many themes through these photos, but one of them is that when the face is the powerful image, it needs to be sharp. The flag doesn't need to be sharp, the face does, but I agree with everything you said.
So we have two more.
Oh, okay. Wow, I don't want to end. All right. Great shot of an interior shot, always hard because lighting's tricky. What I love about this is the composition. I might have straightened it out tiny bit. Again, that vertical line, I just want it to be vertical. But what is really powerful here is the framing of the portrait on the wall. You've got so much story going on here. I want to know what they're watching, including the portrait. The portrait's watching what they're watching. So the composition is fabulous. There's lots of expressions going on. Some people look really happy. Some people are very serious. The only thing I would do differently is I would have, if you had the chance to take a lot of shots of this scene, I would have included one where the guy's arm is down below the face of the only woman in the photo. She's sitting there, she's watching. I want to see what her expression is. And his arm is cutting her out. So I got a lot of guys and stuff going on, and I want to see that woman's face. But otherwise, I love the composition of the room, around the portrait on the wall, and the story that I want to know what they're watching, that they're reacting to. Pete.
Absolutely. And the different reactions to what they're watching, particularly the man lying or sitting on the couch or chair, has a very strong reaction to whatever it is. And then the man's face in the middle on the right has another strong reaction, but not the same emotion. I think having the photograph of Martin Luther on the wall looking in that same direction was either extraordinarily fortunate or brilliantly conceived. What a fascinating shot. It took me a little while to really appreciate this, but I do appreciate it. The lighting in the water and the position of the swimmer is just magnificent. I think the way the lighting plays on the back of the legs is really a fascinating scene. And the feet, with it almost looks like the person is wearing slippers that are glowing. I thought that was really wonderful. Including the divider at the top, I think was excellent idea. I think it adds a great deal to the image. It's in the proper direction, that makes me feel like, okay, we're moving, we're heading off to the right. I would crop on the left. I think adding the wall, I realize the photographer is perhaps saying that this swimmer is just pushing off from the wall, but I didn't think that was necessary, and I thought having the metal part of the divider showing was a bit distracting. But an excellent image, and very, very well done, almost at the professional level. Very nice.
Yeah, I agree. I think this was just, yeah, you could have included the whole body. You didn't need to. It was really nice, good catch, and good to see. Yeah.
And that is it, guys.
Whew.
Those are 40 images. No, thank you, thank you, thank you. Wonderful comments. And if I could make just one overall comment myself, number one, I love the monochrome, and just for effect, you could see that quite a few of these pictures were of other people. And people as a subject are just never ending fascination. So for anyone listening or watching, photographing people, excuse me, is actually a great experience. So I do have one question. Somebody wanted me to show how to straighten out lines in Lightroom. Now, I don't know if everyone's got access to Lightroom, but it is very simple to do. So let me just go ahead and show you. There's a feature in Lightroom called Transform, which is right down here. And you could affect your verticals, your horizontals, actually rotate, if you will, to straighten out. And this is something that I like, the actual aspects, to either broaden, sharpen, narrowing, etc. And then the scale, where you can actually reframe, if you will, your image any way you see fit. It's kind of like zooming in and out, but it is a nice feature. So with that, I will turn everything back over to Twee. Let me get back here.
May Mary and I make a couple of quick comments?
Absolutely.
Notice I'm putting you on the spot, Mary. So
I see that. I see that.
But one of the things that we kept bringing up in the images is that the creativity, which is one of the most challenging parts of photography, is clearly present in these and even in the images that weren't selected. And that's the basis for moving forward into photography. That's something that's very hard to acquire, and basically you've got it. The one thing that we kept bringing up was post-processing, cropping, straightening, darkening. So I would encourage you to examine Lightroom, Photoshop, or any of the 7 million apps on cell phones that allow you to manipulate your photograph. I think that would be a really wonderful next step as you move forward in your photography.
I agree with you. There were so many themes here that were great, but story was so present, and telling a story in your photo is exciting to the viewer and is very important. Moving forward, other than what Pete suggested in post-processing, we have to become less shy, except for street photography. Take control of your scene. Make the scene clean and make it be what you want it to be. Just learn how to be politely manipulative, so that you have in your scene what you want and not a lot of extraneous things. And work on focus. Get the face in focus. But otherwise, this was such a beautiful collection of stories, and I had a great time looking at them.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, Tweets, all
Awesome.
yours.
Thank you, everyone. Do the students have any questions? You can type them in the chat, or you can come off of mute if you have any questions. Cool, I guess not. I figured some of the students might write to me later and ask questions, so I might have questions to pass on to y'all. Cool. If there's nothing else, I want to
Okay.
say thank you to the students for joining, and thank you to the guests. This was amazing. So thank you all so much.
You're quite welcome, Twee. Thank you.
Enjoyed it tremendously.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Students, you can depart now if you want, unless you have anything you want to say. But we'll be closing this out in a few minutes.
Tweet, those are some talented photographers coming up in that next generation.
I know the photos are beautiful.
Exciting.
Yeah,
Very.
very nice stuff.
Yep.
Okay, guys. I'll see everyone later. Thank you again, Mary and Pete. And Twee, thank you for hosting. And Chris, nice meeting you.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Have
Thanks,
a
guys.
great
Take care.
weekend. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.